Hi, it's Chris Titley here. As part of the Scoreboard podcast, I'm joined by Jesse Williams. Jesse, thank you so much for coming in and having a chat.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Jesse, I'm going to start with 2024, mate. How's your 2024 been? We're sitting here at the late 2024. Has it been a good year?
Yeah, it has been good. It's been very fast, trying to keep up with everything, but it's been busy for us, like work-wise and family as well. We added in a little girl this year in February. So
congratulations. Number two?
Number two, yeah. So kicked up the intensity of the year pretty early on, but no, it's been really good. We're looking forward to, it's gone so quickly, but yeah, the next year is going to be here pretty quick.
Mate, absolutely. Now, Jesse, for the listeners out there that don't know you or of you, do you want to give a bit of a recap of your sporting career?
Yeah, sure. I'll try and keep it as short as possible, I guess. I'm originally from Brisbane. I grew up playing basketball, and I would say my mid-teens, 15, 16, I sort of got encouraged to play American football locally, and then from there I played well enough, fell in love with the sport, and actually was, I guess, in a situation lucky enough where I could progress, as in play for Queensland, play for Australia, did all those things, and I was lucky enough to get seen by some junior college scouts when I was out here playing at the AIS, and they didn't offer me a scholarship. They actually just offered me a spot on the team. So if I paid my way over to the US, they'd give me a spot. And I worked 3 jobs out here in Brisbane as a young man, saved up enough money with my family support, and ended up moving over to Yuma, Arizona to play at Arizona Western College. Played there, was the number 1 player in the whole country, pretty much balled out the whole time I was there. Got about 60-something Division I scholarship offers in the first 12 months. And then I made a decision a tough decision to go to essentially the number 1 school in the country in the University of Alabama. Played there, started every game there, was All-American, graduated, dual degree, All-American academic, did everything I possibly could, and then was lucky enough to get drafted into the NFL. Played in the NFL for 3 or 4 years, had a bunch of injuries, won a Super Bowl, lost a Super Bowl, lost a kidney, and then I retired in, I can't remember what year, 17, 18, and then, my background in my studies was in strength conditioning and performance, so I went back and I coached at the University of Alabama from there, and then was there for a couple of years, and then we ended up moving back to Australia just to have my son really around my family a bit more and see what we could do, and that was sort of when COVID locked us down here for a little bit from then on, and then we've sort of been here since then.
Jesse, that was 2 minutes. That was fabulous. Mate, a couple of questions on that. You said you did your study while you're at Alabama. Is that right?
Yep.
How important was that at the time, and for athletes at the time, for people to actually get into the books alongside the sport?
Yeah, well, the US, it's pretty much everything. So they say student athlete, so student does come before the athlete part, and they take that quite seriously all the way down to, like, if your GPA isn't, even if it's the biggest game of the year, if your GPA isn't where it's supposed to be, you're not playing. And that's at the University of Alabama as well. So, but it was super important. It was a big part of what I wanted to do as well, because I knew, football isn't everything my life was going to be based around. And, I wanted to learn. I'm an interested person in especially when I was traveling around, and I just wanted to learn and do a bunch of stuff. And I was just lucky that they had a good support network around to try and fit in that pretty busy schedule already. But I think it's the difference maker for a lot of the guys over there, and you can see it in sport, especially when guys transition out.
Jesse, you mentioned around 14 or 15 you developed an interest for the game, and then you mentioned you also developed a love for the game. Can you go back to those early days, and do you have a specific moment that you remember about American football you thought, this is actually very interesting?
There's probably a few. We played at a place at Judy Holt Park on the south side, and I remember my parents, because basketball was my main sport, and I wasn't allowed to play rugby or anything like that, and it took me forever to convince my parents to let me play this. And I remember getting this old beat up helmet the club rents to you, and walking up to the field and being around all the guys, and I think the camaraderie and like being able to hit people and not get in trouble and like all that sort of stuff, it sort of hooked me pretty quick. And then I think being involved with a team, when I had great coaches back then, not like football coaches, but they were developing men and they were passionate about it. And those were things that I was always drawn to, the passion and the integrity and the intent of what these guys were doing it as. I think that's what really got me locked into it. And then once you start learning about the US style of how that football industry and teams and like the programs and what they develop, it's hard not to get just swept into it. And it was pretty quick, honestly. I would say the first couple of months, I'm like, okay, this is something I can do. And then it probably took about a year before I was starting to believe other people saying I'm good and I should probably do it. It was a little bit of like imposter syndrome to start off with, just because I was big. I wasn't sure if it was just a little bit of a fluke situation, but after a while I was like, okay, maybe I can do this as something more than some hobby on the weekend.
Yeah, and playing American football, obviously being in Queensland, and you mentioned the AIS as well. I mean, was the dream then like maybe I could go to America to play American football?
Yeah, honestly, because I was like one of the first ones to go over, especially any time in my era. Like I never heard of it, and no one around me heard of anyone else going, especially to a big place. So it wasn't at the front of my brain, that thought, any time, I would say, in the first 12 to 18 months. It was only when I started playing really well and I played for Australia, and then I represented Australia in the world team in Miami. I played this game against Team USA and all that, and kind of stood out. And it was really from there I was like, okay, maybe this is something that I need to go to the US and maybe explore what this is. More so for like back then, I wasn't going to do anything here. You know what I mean? Like most young men with an Indigenous background are doing stuff. It's like we're going to try and find something to do, like work wise, because university wasn't something my trajectory was pointed at. So when this popped up, I was like, I'll do that. Like as soon as there was a slither of interest or opportunity, I was like, that's me. I'll make the rest. I'll make the rest go.
And then arriving in the US, do you remember the first day?
100%. Yeah, I remember getting off the plane. I landed in Yuma, Arizona, which Yuma actually sets the Guinness World Record for most sunlight per year. It's extremely hot. It was 123 degrees. Yuma Airport. It's like one terminal, and I didn't know anyone in the US. I only had the coach's phone number written in my passport. It just said Jerry Dominguez and it had Arizona number. So I used to pay phone at the airport when I got there and called him and picked me up. And I remember he took me to the dorms. We ate at a sandwich place in the US called Quiznos, and then he took me to the dorms. And I came a week early because I wanted to train and everything and climatize. So there was no one at school. It was like
just this empty feeling
in the
like,
break. It was the whole school was completely empty,
and empty as well. That you had no friends.
Yeah, like I was just,
yep.
I was so pumped. I was just like, I was working out like 3 times a day. I was running on the field. I was doing a bunch of stuff, and I got to explore and sort of get a little bit comfortable in the space. And then, when people started to come in, it was a little bit different story. But I loved it from the jump. Like I knew adversity was gonna peel the layers away to who I needed to be, and I never really shied away from that. I was one to like, okay, I'm gonna run into the fire and let's see what comes out the other side.
And the NCAA college football, I mean, people that love sport know how big this is, but people outside of sport may not know how just huge and this system is in America.
Yeah.
Do you want to give a bit of a description of your views on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like for example, the University of Alabama, where I went to, I would say it's $5, $6, $7 billion entity as itself, and it's Bryant-Denny Stadium in the small town of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, holds 110,000 people. So it's like 2 Suncorps stacked on top of each other, and it's sold out every week, and you'll have another 150,000 outside tailgating. They start rocking up on Wednesday night or Thursday morning for the Saturday game every week. But the industry of itself is so big. It's a multi-billion dollar industry. Just the recruiting to get good players into college. But it sways back and forth. The industry in comparison to the NFL. I still think college football is more entertaining and people seem to like it a bit more. There's a lot more tradition and story behind it. But it is very geographical as well. So if you're from the state of Alabama and, if you don't go for the University of Alabama or Auburn, you probably should move. You know what I mean? So it's very ingrained in the culture there. So the fans are just die hard. And then the budgets for these programs are huge. Like at Alabama, the budget is yes. If we need it, it's yes. And it's usually how many do we need? After that, it's not we need to do anything like that. I feel like Alabama would probably makes in a weekend what the NRL as a whole thing would make in a year. So it's a little bit hard to find comparisons to anything in Australia. but it's just so big. And obviously the US numbers-wise is so big as well, so it just adds a little bit to it.
And Jesse, the college experience before you went to Alabama, was it Utah you mentioned?
Arizona.
Arizona. The number of offers you received after playing for that into 60-odd offers or whatever you had, like the decision and the weight on your shoulders around your potential career and also the direction of where you may want to go. How hard was that?
It was pretty tough, to be honest, because I had no clue about anything. You know what I mean? Like I was, Nick Saban, who's one of the most prolific, most winningest coach of college football ever. He was my coach at Alabama. He would fly out to see me every week, and I didn't know, when I first seen him, I didn't know who he was. You know what I mean? He was just a short little white guy that came to watch practice, you know what I mean? And same with, I met all the, Monty Kiffin, Lane Kiffin, like all the best coaches in the country. They would come out and everyone would come to see me because I was the number one player in the country at the time. I didn't know any of them from a bar of soap. You know what I mean? So, at that time, I was actually quite lucky. I had a roommate named Andrew Power from South Carolina, and we actually went to Walmart and I bought these big whiteboards to put in our dorms. And I would write the offers down and he would fill in the rest for me. So like what sort of defense, like their conference, head coach, how many eligible seniors above me they had, all this sort of stuff. So I kind of narrowed it down to, a reasonable top 10, top 20. And then, for me, for my choice, the value of it came down to a kind of a split decision of, do I take the easy route and go to a small Division I and just be the absolute man, crush everyone automatic straight to the NFL? Or do I go to a school in SEC like Alabama or LSU where I have to earn every second I get to touch the field? And even as a young man, I was like, if I ever have to write a book or someone does a movie about this, I'm going to have to make it's the hard one because it's going to add so much more to this story and this journey of what I'm on. So I chose the absolute hardest you possibly could, where no one ever expected me to play or deliver, and they sure didn't expect any Australian people rolling around, south of Alabama, So
did you get a nickname? Monstar's your nickname. Did you get an Australian nickname at all?
No, it really started with the Monstar. That came about probably my senior year when we did our strength testing in the summer before fall camp. I benched 600 pounds as a senior, and ESPN or one of the newspapers came out and called me the Aussie Monster, and then this was kind of makes me feel old, but this is right around when Instagram and Twitter were getting popular, and everyone was telling me I got to make an account. So that's the only thing I could think of. I was like, and I wasn't going to put Aussie Monster because it was too long, so I just put the Monster, and someone had the THE Monster taken, so I put THA, and it worked, and then from there I haven't changed it on anything since, and
stuck.
It's just stuck. So whoever wrote that article in 2012, 2011, they sort of shaped it from there. I wasn't really walking around calling myself the Monster. It sort of just came very, very smoothly to me, and I sort of just rolled with it.
And Jesse, the big games, like the college final, which you ended up winning for Alabama, and you mentioned around the 100,000 people and 150,000 people. When you were in that moment, ready to run on, what were you feeling? Are you a pump up guy? Are you a calm guy? And did you think this particular game, be it the best when your best is needed, and you performed well?
I would say it's always down to the coaching, and I was lucky enough to be around, some of the best coaches ever. And for me, all those games were like every other game. How we prepared was the exact same, and all the way down to what we eat for lunch, dinner, everything. The weeks leading up is all the same food the whole season, and that's the mindset I took into it. We knew going in there that we were the baddest dudes walking on the face of the earth, and that was the mentality we took into it. But that's what it's been since day one. And we never got extra motivated or extra pumped for those games because we came out the gates at day one as pumped and as motivated as you can going to get. The hardest part is being able to hold that for 12 to 14 week season. But I'm a pretty intense person when it comes to that. I feel like I'm quite passionate about a lot of things. I try and be passionate about really everything I do. And it probably came out physically and mentally a lot of times when people would see me before games and while I'm playing. So, and that's the part I enjoyed, you know what I mean? I got to be that metaphorical monster that I was, sort of running around. And, I don't know if you've seen photos, but I'd always have like my face painted and a bunch of other stuff like that. So I was a guy that people didn't really want to cross running around the field for sure. And that's what I built up in my own head. You know what I mean? And you need to have those stories and that intrinsic motivation, because you make mistakes in front of 110,000 people. Some people are going to see. You know what I mean? So a lot of pressure there rolling around, and I just choose to focus on the motivating parts of what's going on inside more than like the fear of what could, like I could make a mistake, or we never thought of losing. It never crossed my mind one time. We lost one game each season, which shouldn't have happened as well, but it was such a surprise when we lost, because it never crossed our minds. It didn't cross my mind ever. You know what I mean? It made me sick to my stomach because I don't like losing anything. But yeah, for me, it was just all intrinsic. I would never really run around and hype up anyone else. I would never really yell or holler or anything like that. For me, it was like you would just see me lurking around, and once my face was painted and my shoes were tied up, you weren't getting much out of me until the siren's done.
Do you reckon you're like a perfectionist, do you think, in terms of your head around having a really good game, and then maybe did you end up beating yourself up if you didn't have a great game?
Yeah, absolutely. My wife calls it overthinking. I call it deep thinking. But I'm very much like that. I don't think I've ever had a good game. You know what I mean? Or I don't even really think I've ever had a good day. You know what I mean? I crunch the numbers every time I get to lay my head on the pillow, what I really got to achieve, and what I'm trying to do the next day. And it was the same when I was playing football. I'd go into games, and I was a pretty prominent player on some of the best defenses ever played at Alabama, and it didn't feel like enough half the time. Even when we won, Nick Saban, we run on the 24-hour rule, which I still integrate in my life now. Is you go to bed 24 hours later, we're back to work. So if you want to feel sorry for yourself, you want to pat yourself on the back, you got 24 hours, but when it comes back down to 24 hours, we're back on the field, we're back to work, and we won national championships and fly back the next day, and we're back in the weight room getting ready for the next year. So it's you don't have a lot of time there's no like mad Mondays or whatever the teams do out here. There's nothing like that.
Yeah, and Jesse, the transition from being number one in the country in college with all eyes on to you into this next behemoth called the NFL, and then getting drafted by Seattle. Can you talk about that moment you got picked, and then obviously getting into that squad? Yeah.
It was, again, the whole thing seems like a bit of a blur to me, because sort of where I come from, and I guess the severity of what that is, especially back when I did it. But yeah, I remember like it was no other. I got picked 137th overall. I was actually projected first round. I was like the number 2 or 3 D tackle in the country at the time. And then a few teams failed my physical because I hurt my knee in the championship game, which is pretty cliche for most football movies, right? And then, but once I got picked, for me, it was the same mentality that I took from Australia, going to Arizona to Alabama. It was, once I get there, I just work and just do what I never went over there to make money or to be the world's most popular guy or do anything like that. I was literally taking it day by day. I didn't have anything else to really go on. If I thought a week ahead, I'm getting too far ahead of myself, So I just took the same attitude there, and, I was lucky enough to get on a great team with, again, great coaches and Pete Carroll, a great GM, John Snyder, and, guys that believed in me and, trusted that I had the makeup of what they needed a football player on their team to have. And yeah, it was great. I loved it. I was originally supposed to get picked up by San Diego. The Chargers was the pick before, and I was on the phone to them. And then Seattle called my other phone and said they took the pick from them.
The bat phone. You had a couple of phones going at the same time.
Yeah, well, I had two. I always have 2 phones for some reason. Even now, like an Australian phone and a US phone. But yeah, it was a pretty crazy situation. I'm literally on the phone to San Diego, which I originally thought I was going there because I took a lot of pre-draft trips out there, physicals, workouts, whatever, and I never went to Seattle once. They just came out of left field, and but it was it was one of the best I guess experiences most of my life, even from a young man to retiring from the NFL. Adversity has been a pretty constant theme. It wasn't something I was shying away from, nor something I was surprised by. So it was really just working through a lot of stuff, and injuries with football. I don't know any football players that don't have injuries at all, and especially in my position, I think the average year now is like 2.6 years for a defensive tackle.
Wow.
So it's and I was just grateful that for myself, the type of man I am, to be around the type of men that were in that locker room, from guys like Russell Wilson, Marshawn Lynch, Michael Bennett, guys that are high value, high agency sort of guys that really taught me, and a lot of stuff I still take to this day. Football was sort of just a catalyst to get that.
Jesse, you seem like a confident man, and obviously during America there's a lot of spotlight on you, had a lot of cameras in your face, people following you, a lot of media. How do you cope with that?
I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm a pretty private person, to be honest, especially now with the kids, my wife, and all that sort of stuff. I'm like a ghost a lot of the time. But when I'm over there, you sort of understand it. It's part of the job. Especially obviously in designated media times, like I can talk toe to toe with the best of them. So it's more just being able to control yourself, on and off the field. And I was just lucky that, and this is some of the stuff we teach a lot of kids now is, my values were so strong in myself. I didn't really need to think about the things I was going to say because all the things were leading towards the same direction. So I didn't need to jump. I'm the same person all the time. I don't have a silly side or anything like that.
Ego.
Yeah, I don't have any of that, so I sort of just let it rip most of the time. And I think it's not really something you probably can get used to it, maybe if you do it way more than I do, but I didn't want to get used to it. It was still, I tried to take my time and speak wisely most of the time. And, even when it's kids that have cameras or families or whatever, I made sure I make time because I knew in the situation I am now, retired and looking back, that I gave it to everyone that was giving it to me, pretty much the whole path, I tried to do it the best way I possibly could.
Where do you reckon that self-belief has come from?
I think I had to shove it down my own throat, to be honest. I didn't have a lot leaving. I left with a no plan B, like burn all the boats sort of mentality. I didn't really change that. You know what I mean? The confidence, whether it's perceived as that or it's exuded as that into the atmosphere, it might not always been that. You know what I mean? But I made it work. And I think I was by myself for so many years. I left here when I was 17, so I didn't come back till I was like 30-something. And, you have to really learn on the fly. And I was just lucky enough that when I left, I remember sitting on the plane going over there, and I was just like mentally checking into this is what I have to do. And for me, it was always like, I got to be open to all these opportunities. And as soon as I get it, I have to snatch it out of people's hands and fight for it with my life. You know what I mean? And that was the only attitude I took. But I took it to everything. I didn't pick and choose. If we were doing schoolwork, it was that. If we were relaxing, I would be the best fucking relaxer they've ever seen. But if it was on the field, we were going to do it as well.
Before I touch on the Super Bowl day, the downtime that athletes get, you assume you're talking about the 24-hour thing and get back to work, etc. But there must be some downtime. Does it get a little lonely? You need some hobbies to kind of get your mind off football?
Yeah, definitely. You definitely need, when you get it, especially to a professional level, it engulfs your life. In college, it's maybe 95%. In the NFL, it's like 150%. And, during the season, you're training to stay healthy, do all these things, or rehab and or whatever. In the off season, you're training twice as hard. You're rehabbing twice as hard because you got 232 plus dudes that are younger, cheaper, fresher coming in the gates, in a couple of months. And it's like, where do you fall on that? So, and it just, the whole year, you're just like, man, I need to be ready. I got to get stronger. I got to get faster. I got to do this. So it's just the mental, I would say, weight to it probably takes a physical toll after a while. But yeah, you definitely need other stuff. And I think the family is really important. But you have to really draw some hard lines on and off, and you have to really treat it like work. I had to do that. When I get home, I don't talk about football. I have no football things in my house to show that I ever played football in my life. You have to really separate, what you got going on. Like any profession, you know what I mean? I don't want to go back and, tell my wife I missed a couple of tackles. Something like that. That's just not the right conversations to have, So, but I was lucky enough. Like, I'm definitely not defined by football. I do so many other things. I'm pretty random in my interests and what I like, and it's always taken me to things where it's kind of away from football and sort of give me a bit of a break, especially for my brain.
Yeah, I mean, the relationship with football, do you think it's changed over time?
Yeah, definitely. I think, the older I get, and I'm lucky enough, I would say somewhat heavy in football in Australia and in the US still. I go back pretty regularly, but I think that as I get older, I respect and appreciate what football has given me so much more, by the day. And it was it was grueling. I sacrificed, organs and, time, but I wouldn't change it. If I got to go back and do it again, I'd probably just go harder. And I think that was kind of respected by, the sport of football, and allows me to continue to play a role and, do the things that I'm doing now and still be respected when I go to places. And when I go to Alabama, I can see my name carved in the marble there on the stadium. I can see, posters and paintings, all that sort of stuff, of the things I was able to achieve because of football, which I probably didn't appreciate as much as a young man. I wasn't really about the accolades or anything like that. But now I get to see it. I appreciate it because, my kids can see it and all that sort of stuff.
Speaking of accolades, the Super Bowl, the part of the group that won the Super Bowl, the pinnacle of American sport, the pinnacle of global sport. Everyone watches the Super Bowl, etc. The experience for you being part of that squad. Can you talk about that day?
Yeah, it was mixed emotions. Like my knee was all jacked up. I couldn't play. It was a wild season, unbelievable team, like just great guys. Like the energy was just crazy. I just loved being around and being involved with the process of everything. And as a young rookie, like coming in as a young man, to be around these guys that are 10, 12 years in the NFL, and this is like a kind of cumulative build up to this one thing. And, to play around and we obviously played against Peyton Manning and all that sort of stuff like that. And to actually win, it was kind of surreal. Like every time I get to those places, I won 2 national championships in college and obviously the Super Bowl, and all those 3 times, every time I was there in the field, I could close my eyes and hear the sounds. I would always just remember being on like empty fields in Australia, like when I would practice and all that sort of stuff, like you just kicking up dirt and, running around on like shitty fields, local parks and all that sort of stuff. And just like the disparity between both is just so big. And that's the stuff I appreciated. That's what I guess as a young man was still looking back and just like, man, how am I here? Like, what is this? And I probably didn't appreciate it as much as I should have, but I'm hoping as I get older, my brain will let me do that a little bit more as I grow. And
then you mentioned as well around injuries with NFL players and people playing American football, and you've had your fair share of injuries. I assume, one of the characteristic traits that I've chatted to another number of other guests around has been the resilience has been probably one of the prominent traits. It sounds like you're a resilient person. How much did resilience test you along the way with your injuries?
Yeah, I think it was huge. I think, like I said, adversity was already like intertwined in my life, and it wasn't something I shied away from. And I think, I had my first not major injury, but injury that required surgery was at Alabama in college. And it was just I just had to get my knee scoped, and I was running 4 days later. But I think going through that process in college with that support and, it's a bummer as a first timer, and then you hurt your knee and you're like, I got to miss something. Especially as a guy like me, like I'm a like being early, I got to be at everything, I got to do everything sort of guy. And for me not to be physically able to do it, I was going insane. You know what I mean? It was really tough. So I had to learn. Quickly. And I was, the athletic trainers at Alabama, they do a really good job of understanding that is the learning point that you need to move forward from if you want to play this the rest of your life. And I was just lucky enough, I learned from each little niggly thing, and not only learn about my body, but I learned about, okay, I can't, all the way down to like, don't limp, do not limp. You know what I mean? It's like a mental thing for myself. Like, I'm not walking like I'm hurt. I'm not even thinking, I'm not assuming there's pain coming. I'll deal with it when it gets there, that sort of stuff. And, I think the resilience in that, without that, a certain amount of grit, I wouldn't be able to push back as much to those situations. Because I've had some pretty, like all the way down to obviously having cancer and stuff in the NFL, like they're not situations normal people usually have to come across in that same circumstance. And I think if I didn't have any of that grit and I wasn't already somewhat weathered or worn down, I probably wouldn't have handled it as well.
Looking back, does that part of your life towards the end of your playing career, does it feel like it was an exhausting period of time?
I don't think exhausting would be the word. I definitely think it was testing. And I think for myself, I've always kind of looked at it as like that. I talk to my wife about it a lot. And, when I'm down in that metaphorical dark room dealing with a situation or circumstance at hand, is really like, my first instinct is, without trying to jump to a negative conclusion, is like, what am I having to learn from this to get out of this, And I try and look at it. Most of the things that come across my life is like, I got to learn from this so this doesn't happen again. Or, something's trying to teach me something here. I got to figure out what it is before I try and break free from here. And that sort of mentally got me through a lot of it, trying to figure all that stuff out. And it kind of was back to that intrinsic and those values of just like, I was waking up challenging myself. I wasn't waiting for David Goggins to knock on the door and tell me to get going. I was doing that internally. I think that was like a really big difference maker for me.
And now you've got children, 2 of them now. Those values and those principles, I mean, how important is for you to them to sort of build a legacy for your family now?
Yeah, so it's like, especially with like the world now and social media and like crazy trends of stuff that's happening, I think for me, values are more important than ever right now. Not so much in the values that I need to post on Instagram or I need to yell at people, just the values I need to be, the values I need to lead by example with, the values I need to carry around with me 24/7, like I got a backpack on. And those are the ways that I want to have my kids learn first. Watch me, watch your mom do it. This is how we do it. Our interaction, how we do things, and inside the house and outside as well. And I think it's I still do a lot of coaching. I'm around a lot of people, whether it's football, business, or whatever. I think without those values and without kind of like the bowling bumpers of those values to keep me in line, I'd be lost. You know what I mean? And I'm not religious by any means, but those values are the closest thing I can find to my own personal religion on how I need to sort of carry myself. And, it's not something I force on everyone around me, but when people around me for more than a couple hours, they start to see that you can see where these values are going to poke out pretty quick.
And the tail end of your career, was there a thinking about what to do, the plan B then? And from then, has that sort of played into fruition since retirement, or have you pivoted a little bit?
Probably a bit of both. Working in coaching was always something I wanted to do. I always wanted to be around the sport. I wanted to be around high value, high agency people. I like to challenge. I like working towards a team. I feel like I wish I would have went into like the military or something like that. I'd probably be perfect for it. But I enjoy that, a very attention to detail-based preparation and execution. And I need to look left and right and have people I trust that have my life in their hands and vice versa. And so I just apply those values to football as much as I can now. And when I first retired, I went into strength conditioning, which is obviously a big part of, playing football and doing that, which was great for me as well. And now it's just utilizing that tail end of my story and the rest of it, I would say, to weaponize that and use that in those situations that I'm able to do it. But I think for now, football, I'm quite passionate about the men's development, young men specifically in Australia. I think, when I wake up and when I go and coach football kids or I go and speak around the country, I try and be the man that I needed when I was 15 or 16 to run into, with values that stand out so much that I take notice and, speak properly, hold themselves the right ways, they can be an influence in the right way, and try and do that on a daily basis and string those days together and hopefully, make a difference in adding that stuff together. And it's working so far. And I think if I stay on this path, I've always been passionate around being around people and utilizing my skills to help others. I feel like I've already lived my life. I've done everything I ever thought I was supposed to do and more. I'm on like these side missions now, just trying to figure out what crazy things I can get up to in a good way.
And Jesse, as a follower of your Instagram, there's some amazing photos there, mate. Where did the passion of photography come in?
Oh man, it started when I was in college. I actually was begging my parents for a camera my junior year at Alabama, and it was mainly because we would go to these games and I'm walking, like we played at Dallas Cowboy Stadium, and I'm walking around and all I had was like this weird flip phone. There's no way I could get the photos off.
With the blurry pixels.
Yeah,
right?
it looked like an oil painting by the time I downloaded it. And I just wanted to document. I'm big on documenting my life, not for me, but for my kids. Because I remember, as simple as it is, going to my grandma's house and seeing the photos of my parents and what life was and all that sort of stuff. I wanted my kids to see that at the right time through my eyes and what we're doing, and it's sort of, I taught myself that first surgery I had, I was just watching YouTube how to use a camera. I didn't buy a good camera until I made the NFL. My first year in the NFL, I bought myself a nice camera.
Paycheck and this is my first purchase, right?
Yeah, something like that pretty much. I had no money before that. So, and then now it's just like, I only have like Leica cameras, which is sort of top of the line, like sort of like pieces that I have with me, and I carry them around pretty much wherever I go and take photos of the kids. And I try and, as much as I tell my story to a lot of people, I try and do a good job of capturing my story so my kids can get a pretty inside lane to what that story was really about.
Did you carry a journal when you were younger? Did you write a diary?
I wrote a lot, and not so much specifically a diary, to type a lot, because my hands, I was just never good at handwriting. My hands are too big. But I did type a lot. I'm in the process at the moment of trying to get a book situated at the moment, and I was lucky enough, when I wasn't writing, I was taking photos all the time. And like in the off season, like I wouldn't go to Cancun or go snowboarding or something like that. I'd be around the city and I'd just be like doing crazy things, and I'd go out hunting or driving in the woods. I'd be taking photos and like documenting. And I'd fly helicopters around in the mountains doing crazy stuff. And those are the sort of moments I'm like, at least I want my kids to think I was doing cool stuff at least, and not just messing around.
How do you find your relationship with nature now in terms of getting out and about and getting the beautiful moments, the sunshine, etc.?
No, I love it. I'm very grateful for a lot of things I get to do and wake up and move around and work out and, have my family, have a nice place, do whatever we need to do. And I'm big on getting outside. I like hunting. I like just being outside. I don't like talking to people all the time, so I like the quiet. So I like getting out and moving around. And I have to do it all the time. I have to walk around, and I don't always drive everywhere. I like to get going and get around. People see me wandering around all the time. So, but it's a big part of what we do, especially like with the kids around the beach, and whether you got to take them out camping or take them places and stuff like that. I think it's really important.
I'm going to go on to some personality traits now that I generally ask some ex and current athletes around their superpowers, what they led them to become who they are. I'm going to start with the word empathetic. You an empathetic person?
I feel like I'm empathetic to other people, just never myself. I try and, the standard I hold for myself is something maybe a little different and a little bit more unachievable for other people. My wife thinks I'm too hard on myself, but it's just I don't allow excuses, especially if they come from inside. I don't listen to them. But I'll if other people come with something good, I'll be empathetic to people's situations or certain things to a certain extent, but not for myself.
Competitive.
Yeah, off the Richter scale.
Where's that come from?
My parents probably both were playing elite level basketball as a kid, and we grew up from a young age in an Indigenous children's hostel my grandparents ran. So I was around Indigenous, like rough kids my whole life. So you're always trying to win something, you know what I mean? And they had a basketball court, so I was always playing basketball. I'd play until it gets dark out there, making sure I win, making sure I win. And I think it just stuck with me to the point where it's like I'll get physically ill if I lose stuff. I just, not something I like anywhere close to me.
Structured?
Yeah, I think I have to be. My routine, preparation is super important to me. Like my wife, she drives her insane because I won't buy anything until I've like researched every aspect for like 6 months. I need to figure out like what camera this is. Like I need to make sure, I don't care how much it is. I just need to know it's exactly what it's supposed to be. I'll contact everyone I know to figure something out. And I think that same with like my routine. I wake up every morning at 3:45. I go to work out. I got to be there by 4. If I'm not there by 4, man, my day's on the wrong foot.
Does that sort of veer into superstition?
No.
Are you superstitious?
Not really.
Left foot on first for the boot, left sock up here, no?
No, the only things I had like that was, from a young age when I first started playing basketball, we'd always carry our shoes in a separate bag. And My dad said, as soon as you get on the court and you tie your laces up, that means it's go time. And that's how I treated everything when I had my cleats and all that sort of stuff. But that was the only thing I really did. Everything else was like, because I've seen the other end of that scale. I've seen people that are superstitious about every little thing and it doesn't always work out. So for me, I was just like, I just need to keep going hard. I need to keep going hard. And I think the routine was probably the biggest one that kept it in, that kept all the other stuff out. It was just like, that's what it is. And I would maybe meander 1 degree the way sometimes, but never enough to be noticed.
You a goal setter?
Yes and no. Previously, probably much more. Now at the moment, with my family, I try that my priorities and my values dictate the goals a little bit more than my personal. I've done everything I've ever wanted to do. I try and wake up and try and figure things what I want to do, like goal-wise for myself. But I think my family's future, our values, what we stand for, and what we're trying to achieve is more important than me I'm not trying to make a certain amount of money. I don't need no more awards. I got enough awards, rings, accolades. I don't need any of that. I'm trying to do the exact opposite. I'm trying to prioritize quiet and, sitting around and moving around less,
On that, what's something that makes you happy at the moment?
I would say my family. Yeah, my family's usually the biggest one. I travel a fair bit, so when I do come back, or if they don't come with me on certain trips, then it's that for sure. And I think happy and keeping me sane would be, training still has to be a huge part of my life. If I don't move physically, I'm dying. I'm dying.
Yeah, and that routine that you mentioned, coming off that into your own set routine, has it been a little tricky to maintain?
I honestly have tried to not change much from when I was playing professionally. I just, at the times, and the hardest part is time zones when I do travel back forth to the US quite regularly. But if anyone that knows me, they know that, you can see my stories in the morning. I'll post at 3:30 in the morning, be a quote that I wake up, there's ringing in my head, or a song I know or whatever. And I get it cracking pretty early on. And that's just always been like that. It's not something, I try to do a good job in the transition of keep things that had kept me going in that time as a part of my life somehow. And I'm always just so passionate about training, and I need to challenge myself. If I don't feel a little bit of pain, or I don't can't push myself to the point of okay, I still know I'm there. You know what I mean? When I coach these kids now, or I'm still around other men, I still know I'm the strongest dude here. I still know I can, if we need to wrestle, we need to wrestle. You know what I mean? And I still need that confidence. My daughter was born in February, so I got 18 years. I got to stay big, strong, and I got to keep a gun license till then. So until then, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'm interested to know around the strength and conditioning. Obviously, you're a big bloke, and you've obviously played against some of the best. But then that just to maintain that top of the game, it's got to be a little bit challenging when you're not getting paid for it.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. And my wife says it all the time. Why do you need to train today? But it's a lot for me now is just mentally. It's my time to focus on everything, you know what I mean? I can gather my thoughts still while working out, without walking through the motions. I'm still, my mental acuity for what I need to do once I get done is still pretty sharp on what it is. But, I think for me is just if I can't find challenge in the day, I like doing a lot of hikes, and, I weigh 160 some kilos. So them hikes are a challenge most of the time. And doing jujitsu, bow hunting, all these things. For me, it's just it's the challenge of it. I can't play football anymore. I coach, and I don't want it to fully engulf my life. I still need those breaks in it. And I think even if it's supposed to be a break, I still need a little bit of challenge and adversity thrown my way just to know I'm still alive, still got something in the tank.
One final question. We do this podcast and we repeat this in 5 years' time. Where would you like your life to be?
I think, we're looking to move back to the US full-time next year. I think with what we're doing with football now, helping the kids get to the US, I think, I'd like to get that flourish to sending hundreds and maybe thousands of kids in the next 5 years. And, for me and my family, we're looking to buy a farm in the US and just kind of live off the land and be, a little bit involved with football and mainly involved in just our life. And that's pretty much the goal for that at the moment. I think, finding that peace and quiet is going to be important, and that's what we're working to at the moment. We got to walk through the crowd before we get to the good parts, and that's where we're grinding through at the moment.
Jesse, thank you so much for coming on the Scoreboard podcast today to have a chat about your life during sport, before professional athlete, and obviously post that. There's a long way to go in life, and obviously you've got some dreams and aspirations. So congratulations, and look forward to catching up.
Appreciate that. Thank you.